Letter from the Holy Father Francis to the bishops of the pastoral region of Buenos Aires in response to the document Basic Criteria for the Application of Chapter 8 of the Amoris Laetitia. Dear Brother, I received the letter from the pastoral region Buenos Aires Basic Criteria for the Application of Chapter 8 of Amoris Laetitia. Thank you very much for sending it to me, and I congratulate you for the work you have done. A true example of accompanying the priests, and we all know how necessary this closeness of the bishop with his clergy and the clergy with the bishop is. The most close neighbor of the bishop is the priest, and the commandment to love the neighbor as himself begins, for us bishops, precisely with our priests. The writing is very good, and fully explicits the meaning of Chapter 8 of Amoris Laetitia. There are no other interpretations, and I'm sure it will do a lot of good. May the Lord repay you for this effort of pastoral charity. And it is precisely pastoral charity that moves us to go out to find the distant, and, once found, to begin a path of welcome, accompaniment, discernment, and integration in the ecclesial community. We know that this is tiring. It is a body-to-body pastoral, not satisfied with programmatic, organizational, or legal mediations, although necessary. Simply welcome, accompany, discern, integrate. Of these four pastoral attitudes, the least cultivated and practiced is discernment, and I consider urgent the formation in discernment, personal and community, in our seminaries and presbyteriums. Finally, I would like to remind you that Amoris Laetitia was the fruit of the work and prayer of the whole Church, with the mediation of 2 synods and the Pope. That is why I recommend a complete catechesis of the Exhortation that will certainly help the growth, consolidation, and holiness of the family. Once again, I thank you for the work done, and I encourage you to move forward in the various communities of the dioceses with the study and catechesis of Amoris Laetitia. Please don't forget to pray and make me pray for me. Errata. May Jesus bless you, and the Holy Virgin take care of you. Fraternally. From the Vatican, September 5th, 2016. Now this is the basic criteria for the application of Chapter 8 of Amoris Laetitia from the pastoral region of Buenos Aires. Dear priests, we welcome with joy the exhortation Amoris Laetitia, which calls us above all to grow the love of spouses and to motivate young people to opt for marriage and family. Those are the big issues that should never be neglected or overshadowed by other issues. Francis has opened several doors in family pastoral care, and we are called to take advantage of this time of mercy, to assume, as a pilgrim church, the richness that the apostolic exhortation gives us in its different chapters. Now we will stop only in chapter 8, since it refers to bishops' guidelines, in order to discern about the possible access to the sacraments of some divorced in new union. We believe it is convenient, as bishops of the same pastoral region, to agree on some minimum criteria. We offer them without prejudice to the authority that each bishop has in his own diocese to specify, complete, or define them. First of all, we remind you that it is not convenient to talk about permissions to access the sacraments, but about a process of discernment accompanied by a pastor. It is a personal and pastoral discernment. In this way, the pastor should emphasize the fundamental announcement, the kerygma, which stimulates or renews the personal encounter with the living Jesus Christ. Pastoral accompaniment is an exercise of the via caritatis. It is an invitation to follow the path of Jesus, that of mercy and integration. This itinerary claims the pastoral charity of the priest who welcomes the penitent, listens to him carefully, and shows him the maternal face of the Church, while accepting his right intention and his good purpose of placing the whole life in the light of the gospel and practicing charity. This path does not necessarily end in the sacraments, but can be oriented towards other ways of integrating more into the life of the Church, a greater presence in the community, participation in prayer or reflection groups, commitment in various ecclesial services, etc. When the specific circumstances of a couple make it feasible, especially when both are Christians with a path of faith, the commitment to live in continence can be proposed. Amoris Laetitia does not ignore the difficulties of this option and leaves open the possibility of accessing the sacrament of reconciliation when it fails in that purpose. In other more complex circumstances, and where a declaration of nullity could not be obtained, the option mentioned may not be feasible in fact. However, a path of discernment is also possible, if it is recognized that in a specific case there are limitations that attenuate responsibility and guilt, particularly when a person considers that he would fall into a subsequent fault harming the children of the new union. Amoris Laetitia opens the possibility of access to the sacraments of reconciliation and the Eucharist. These, in turn, dispose the person to continue maturing and growing with the force of grace. But we must avoid understanding this possibility as unrestricted access to the sacraments, or as if any situation justified it. What is proposed is a discernment that adequately distinguishes each case. For example, special care requires a new union that comes from a recent divorce, or the situation of someone who has repeatedly failed in their family commitments. Also, when there is a sort of apology or ostentation of one's own situation as if it were part of the Christian ideal. In these more difficult cases, we pastors must accompany with patience by seeking some path of integration. It is always important to guide people to put their conscience before God, and for this the examination of conscience proposed by Amoris Laetitia is useful, especially with regard to how they have behaved with their children or with the abandoned spouse. When there were unresolved injustices, access to the sacraments is particularly scandalous. It may be convenient that an eventual access to the sacraments is carried out in a reserved manner, especially when conflicting situations are foreseen. But at the same time, we must not stop accompanying the community so that it grows in a spirit of understanding and welcome, without this implying creating confusion in the teaching of the Church about the indissoluble marriage. The community is an instrument of mercy that is undeserved, unconditional, and free. Discernment is not closed, because it is dynamic and must always remain open to new stages of growth and new decisions that allow the ideal to be realized more fully, according to the law of graduality and trusting in the help of grace. We are above all shepherds. That is why we want to welcome these words of the Pope. I invite pastors to listen with affection and serenity, with the sincere desire to enter the heart of the drama of people and to understand their point of view, to help them live better and recognize their own place in the Church. With affection in Christ, the Bishops of the Region, September 5th, 2016.